Good morning. So we shall start. Yesterday we have talked about the establishment of Indian National Congress and all the three theories, Indian National Congress, all the three theories, the colonial theory and then safety valve theory, and we have regional integration theory, all the three theories regarding the establishment of Congress. So Congress was established by A.O. Hume, a retired civil servant, and he never became president of Congress. Never became president of Congress. His official position was lifetime general secretary. Lifetime general secretary of Congress. His official position. A.O. Hume. He never became president of Congress, but his official position was lifetime general secretary of Congress. So all of you find work at home, homework. So homework, some simple homework for your practice session. How many British became president of Congress? How many British became president of Congress? Who hold the post of president for the maximum tenure, maximum years? Who hold the post of president for the maximum years? Continuously. Maximum years continuously. Who became maximum number of times? Maximum number of times president of Congress? First women president of Congress? First women president of Congress. First Indian women president of Congress? In which session resolution on Swaraj was passed? Swaraj was passed. How many special session? How many special session of Congress? When Mahatma Gandhi became president of Congress, which session fundamental right was passed? fundamental right. Which session Congress demanded Purna Swaraj, complete independence? So all these questions you have to search at home. Keep trying with all the resources. Keep learning. Keep learning. So search whatever the sources you have, all the questions related to this. So now we are coming to a separate topic called the first phase of Indian national movement. First phase of Indian national movement. (1885 to 1900). This is the first phase of Indian national movement. (1885 to 1900). So I told you the first session only 72 delegates had participated. The membership of Congress was very less. Membership of Congress was very less. In first session at Bombay, the membership of Congress was very less. Membership of Congress was very less. But very soon, the membership reached to the lakhs. In first session, the notable absentee was Surendranath Banerjee. Surendranath Banerjee, he was expected to join the Congress in the first session because he was a very known face of Indian politics, but he did not participate in the first session. So he was a notable absentee in the first session, Surendranath Banerjee. 72 members, Surendranath Banerjee was notable absentee because Surendranath Banerjee, he established his own All India organization that is called Indian National Conference. Indian National Conference. Indian National Conference. He established his own All India organization Indian National Conference. So he did not participate in the first session. Indian National Congress. So now he established the organization Indian National Conference, and he established his parallel session at Calcutta. So when session of the Congress was established at Bombay, then session of the Congress at Calcutta. Session of the Congress at Calcutta by S.N. Banerjee. It's called Indian National Conference. So next year he joined the organization Congress. So 1885, when the session of the Congress was going at Bombay, same session, same time, Surendranath Banerjee had organized its parallel session at Calcutta. Parallel session at Calcutta, Indian National Conference. So, second parallel session at Calcutta. First phase of Indian national movement. So, first phase of Indian national movement. Second session, parallel session at Calcutta. So, in 15 years of the Congress, 1885 to 1900, gradually there were two powerful wings. One was called moderate and second is called extremist. So, moderate and extremist. Moderate and extremist. And extremist. So by the closing years of the 19th century, you can write by the closing years of 19th century, there emerged two powerful wings of the Congress, moderate and extremist. Moderate and extremist. Two powerful wings of the Congress, moderate and extremist. There emerged two powerful wings of the Congress, moderate and extremist. mass base. Moderate, elite class. Elite class. Moderate. English speaking. English speaking. Moderates had firm faith in British sense of justice. British sense of justice. Moderates had firm faith in British sense of justice. They admire British political institutions. British political institutions. They admire British political institutions. British political institutions. They admire British political institutions. They admire British political institutions. Now listen this statement clearly. They were not against the British rule. Not against the British rule. But they were against un-British character of British rule. Character. They were against un-British character of British rule. Un-British character. So they were not against British rule, but they were against un-British character of British rule. Un-British character of British rule. They were not against British rule, but they were against un-British character of British rule. Un-British character of British rule. Means they wanted that whatever the institution and functions are there in England, we should have the same institution and functions in India. Means character is that whatever the institution and functions are there in England, we should have a same institution and function there in India as well. So they were not against the British rule, but they were against the un-British character of British rule. So according to them, the British government in India is not British government, it is un-British government. So if there is a British government, then there is no problem. So this is how they try to define it, that the government of India is un-British character. So they were not against the British rule, but they were against the un-British character of British rule. Against the un-British character of British rule. They were not against the British rule, but they were against un-British character of British rule. Moderate. Extremist. They were urban middle class. Urban middle class. They were mostly Arya Samajist. Urban middle class, they were mostly Arya Samajist. Mostly Arya Samajist. They believed in cultural nationalism. Cultural nationalism. They believe in cultural nationalism. Mostly Arya Samajist. I hope all of you must be knowing the name Lal, Bal and Pal. Lal, Bal and Pal. They were famous extremist trio. They were extremist trio. Extremist trio. Lal, Bal and Pal. They were famous extremist trio. So the mass base is quite different. They were elite class, urban class, high class, and they were the urban middle class. Means you can say one thing, that the politics in India means urban. Politics in India means urban. Politics in India is urban. There is no so much intrusion of the politics or the Indian national movement in the rural areas. No. Rural areas, villages was totally unaffected by the political development. So whether it was moderate or whether it was extremist, the politics means urban business. Politics is basically confined to the urban areas. So moderate and extremist. Method and technique. Moderate and extremist. moderate and extremist. Method was constitutional agitation, constitutional opposition, constitutional opposition. Extremist passive resistance. Constitutional opposition or the extremist is passive resistance. We will talk what is passive resistance. Constitutional opposition means P4 prayer, petition, persuasion, and philanthropy. Prayer, petition, persuasion, and philanthropy. P4. And here boycott. Boycott. So they followed the constitutional opposition means praying to the British, presenting petition to the British, following British's yachna, philanthropy. So many times keep on pushing. So constitutional opposition, and here is a passive resistance, that is boycott. Boycott. So prayer, petition, persuasion, and we have a boycott. In passive resistance, there is no harm to life. No violence, but government should be put on halt. Like one of the best weapon is hartal, strike. Normal function, do not function. So hartal is a form of passive resistance. Government should be on halt. Normal function, do not function. So boycott. So prayer, petition, persuasion, philanthropy. So normal function do not function. But actually, these extremists, Lal Bal Pal, always very critical, very vocal. So Lal Bal Pal called the politics of moderate as politics of begging. Politics of begging. He said that you are a political beggar. Politics of begging. Mendicant policy. Mendicant policy. Mendicant, you understand? Sadhu, priest. Mendicant policy. Or the my bap politics. My bap. According to extremist, British is your mother, British is your father. My bap politics. So extremists always criticize. Extremists always criticized. Always criticized moderate. Extremists call the politics of moderate as mendicant policy or politics of begging or the my bap politics. My bap politics. So this is called politics of begging. So government should be put on halt. Politics of begging, mendicant policy or the my bap politics. Anybody had problem in understanding anything? Just put me a question because we are entering in the very tricky portion. So I'm giving you enough time to understand. I hope that all of you will find the best brain to catch the entire concept. So method and technique. Extremist. Moderate. Objective. Self-government. Moderates demanded self-government. An extremist had a Swaraj. But one thing you have to understand that none of them were talking about independence. Self-government is persuasion. To get the right. persuasion to get the right. Means along with the British. Persuasion to get the rights along with the British. That Indians should also take part, Indians should also be along with British self-government. That British should not be the only, but we should also persuasion to be along with the British. And Swaraj is demand as a matter of right. 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 So demand as a matter of right along with the British. So this is a difference. But remember one thing, I told you that none of them were talking about independence. Because during that time, independence from the British was not even in the distant dream. Maybe some people were thinking, but they could not dare to ask. And even the support based to the nationalism was also very less. Support base of the nationalism was also very less. Self-government and Swaraj. Demand as a matter of right. Objective. Persuasion along with British. Demand as a matter of right means India belongs to us. You are here. But we should also take part because it belongs to mine. We are not asking you to leave. But you should not devour us. And persuasion means, sir, if you will give us, then okay. If you're not giving, please try giving us. So this is what is the approach of answer. Approach of answer. approach of answer. So that is how you're asking, means India belongs to us, this is mine. You should also sit, but I should not have any trouble. So this is the approach between Swaraj, but none of them were asking about independence in the distance dream. At least in the first phase of Indian national movement. But demand to tackle with the British was, approach to tackle with the British was different. So this is a moderate and extremist. Passive resistance. Passive resistance. Passive resistance. So theory of passive resistance it was given by Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh in his journal New Lamps for Old, in his publication New Lamps for Old, explained the doctrine of passive resistance. Explained the doctrine of passive resistance. Explain the doctrine of passive resistance. Aurobindo Ghosh said, political freedom is life breath of any nation. 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 New lamps for old. If nation is not having any political freedom, that means nation is a dead nation. So political freedom is life breath of any nation. Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh wrote a book of poetry. Savitri. Savitri, book of poetry, Savitri. Matribhumi, Matribhumi, motherland, motherland, Matribhumi, motherland. We are not fighting for land. This is our motherland. So Matribhumi. This is our motherland. So he added religious touch to nationalism. Religious touch to nationalism. Bharat Mata. Bharat Mata. So he added religious touch to nationalism. Matribhumi. Savitri. Bharat Mata. So theory of passive resistance. Political freedom is life breath of any nation. So moderate and extremist. We started discussing about the moderate and extremist. With mass base, with method and technique, with the objective. So both moderate and extremist had emerged in a differential ways, but they were the members of Indian National Congress by the closing years of the 19th century. So by the closing years of 19th century, both moderate and extremist emerged as a very powerful wing of the Congress. So within 15 years of the establishment of Congress, you can see the moderate and extremists coming out in a very large number as a member of the Congress. So moderate and extremist. So what factor that led to the rise of extremism? You know, early nationalists, they all were having the moderate doctrine. All the early nationalists, they were the elite class Indians. They were mostly English educated. And they got exposure because of the many changes and the constitutional politics they came across in Europe. So they were basically having the strong faith in British sense of justice. But when suddenly a new section had developed with a strong influence of Swaraj and Swadeshi, that they were not extremist. When the term extremist coined, then other section of the Congress already became moderate. Otherwise, we call them early nationalist. So, extremist tendency developed within the Congress. So, what is the reason behind the rise of extremism in Congress? The causes of the rise of extremism in Congress. Extremism in Congress. Yes, Swaraj, the word Swaraj never remained defined in an exact sense. So Swaraj, they demanded, but Swaraj did not mean complete independence. Nobody had ever asked, and nobody had clarified also. But it is well understood the kind of demand they were proposing. So that they demanded Swaraj, that Indians should get the due right because it belongs to the Indians. So all the rights, economic right, political right, that should be accorded to the Indian first because it belongs to Indian. So this is what is the meaning of Swaraj. But they never use the word Azadi, complete independence. So Indians should rule India, that is there, but they never said that British should go in from India and we should sever the ties with the Britishers also. Okay, something like that. Indians should get complete right as a citizen of India. That has to be defined, citizenship, and that is pledged. And moderate had a very constitutional politics that British should pass some of the laws empowering Indians, giving right concessions to the Indians. But definitely you keep the things that Swaraj does not mean independence. There was no demand as such raised by the Indians. There was no demand as such raised by Indians. So India for Indians, that is word you can use, India for Indians. But whether British should give India independence, that word should not be used. You must not use that word. Causes of the rise of extremism in Congress. There are various internal and international factors. Internal as well as international factors that lead to the rise of extremism in Congress. We are very much affected by the international changes. So causes of the rise of extremism. So in the closing years of the 19th century, extremists emerged as a very powerful force in Indian National Congress. Extremists emerged as a very powerful force in Indian National Congress. emerged as a very powerful force in Indian National Congress. So among the international factors, Ethiopia defeated Italy in world history. You can see that this is the biggest upset, like the FIFA World Cup, that Ethiopia defeated Italy. So in the war, this African country defeated the mighty European. Ethiopia defeated Italy. Russo-Japan War 19045. Russo-Japan War 19045. So Ethiopia defeated Italy 1897 and Russo-Japan War 1905. So tiny Japanese defeated the mighty Russian and Ethiopia defeated the Italy. So it broke the invincibility of the West. Ethiopia defeated Italy and Russo-Japan War, so it broke the invincibility of the West. Europeans are understood to be invincible, means cannot be defeated. But these two events break the invincibility of the West. Break the invincibility of the West. So it greatly emboldened the spirit of Indians. It greatly emboldened the spirit of Indians. So these two events break the invincibility of the West and it greatly emboldened the spirit of Indians. It greatly emboldened the spirit of Indians. Second, international factor. Rise of nationalism in Italy and Germany. After Germany and Italy became a nation, the fundamentals was very much that this is the era of rise of nationalism. So rise of nationalism in Italy and Germany. How after becoming a nation, both Italians and Germans emerged as a very strong nation. So it again strengthened the spirit of Indians. So Japan defeated Russia and Ethiopia defeated Italy. It greatly emboldened the spirit of Indians. Russo-Japan War. Among the internal factors, which is a very important factor in the rise of nationalism. Among the internal factors, the first is the entry of Arya Samajist. In Indian National Congress. Entry of Arya Samajist in Indian National Congress. You know the Arya Samajist, they were very fiery cultural nationalists. So Arya Samajist in Indian National Congress. Entry of Arya Samajist in Indian National Congress. Arya Samajist came to Congress with the high slogan, India for Indians. Swaraj. Swadeshi. India for Indians, Swaraj and Swadeshi. India for Indians. Entry for Arya Samajist. Second, internal politics of Maharashtra. Internal politics of Maharashtra. Internal politics of Maharashtra. Maharashtra and Bengal, these two states was very influential state, and it shaped the national politics always. During the days of the national movement, Maharashtra and Bengal had emerged as a very powerful state, and it shaped the national politics always. Shaped the national politics always. Internal politics of Maharashtra. Like in Marathi politics, there was an organization Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. I hope you remember, yesterday we have talked about Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, established by M.G. Ranade. So there were two members in the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. One was Gokhale and second was Tilak. So there was a factional politics in Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. Factional politics. There was factional politics in Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. Factional politics in Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. Gokhale represented the moderate section, and yes, and the extremist section. So when they entered in Congress from Maharashtra politics to the Congress politics of Congress, they started the factional politics. So I mean differences between Gokhale and Tilak as a member of Pune Sarvajanik Sabha had deep impact on Indian National Congress. Had deep impact on Indian National Congress. So factional politics of Maharashtra led to the rise of moderate and extremist. So as a member of Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, Gokhale and Tilak so moderate and extremist. Gokhale and Tilak. This is a factional politics. So deep impact on the national politics. Third, impact of India Council Act. (1892). India Council Act 1892 was passed. British passed this act to appease the moderate and to negate the extremist. India Council Act 1892 was passed to appease the moderate and to negate the extremist. To negate the extremist. Impact of India Council Act 1892. To appease the moderate and to negate the extremist. So India Council Act, some of the demands of the moderate was accepted by the British. Some of the demand of the moderates was accepted by British. Accepted by British. Appease the moderate and negate the extremist. Impact of the India Council Act 1892. In this act, number 1 point, first time provision of indirect election. Indirect election was used. Provision of indirect election was used. Provision of indirect election was used. System of indirect election. Provision of indirect election was used. Means the some members will be elected by the elected representative. You understand the elected representative, like members of the local self-government, district board, commissions, committees. So not directly by the people, but people elected those, they will elect members of the legislature. So provision of indirect election was used. Some members will be elected. But remember, the word election was not used. People's representative, right? So therefore, there was no word as such election. But people's representative. Though no word election was used. So provision of indirect election was given. Second. Second point क्या है? That's Indian members or the members, British also. Members in the council can discuss the budget. Members in the council can discuss the budget. Discuss the budget. Members in the council can discuss the budget. Discuss the budget. There was no provision of voting. No provision of voting. There was no provision of voting. So Indian member in the council can discuss the budget, or the members in the council can discuss the budget without any provision of voting. Moderates were very much satisfied. Moderates were very much satisfied with this act, but extremists was highly unsatisfied. And therefore, it further widened the rift between moderate and extremist. It further widened the rift between moderate and extremist. So extremist highly unsatisfied and moderates was highly satisfied. Fourth factor, the partition of Bengal. We will study partition of Bengal in detail, but here we are studying the causes for the rise of extremism. So we have given one example that partition of Bengal was also very much responsible for the rise of extremism in Congress. So partition of Bengal. In fact, extremists held Congress responsible for partition of Bengal. Extremists charged Congress that Congress had so much appeasement for the British that British got encouraged, and that encouragement led to the British dareness to go for the partition of Bengal. So it is the appeasement policy of the moderate, in fact, was cited as responsible for the partition of Bengal. So extremist was more heavy on the moderate rather than the British. Extremists held moderate responsible mainly, and the appeasement policy of the moderate. The British had encouraged so much that British can dare to go for the partition of Bengal. So this is how the partition of Bengal was basically led to the rise of extremist tendency in Congress. So partition of Bengal, extremist charged moderate of its appeasement policy. Extremists charged moderate of its appeasement policy, which encouraged British to take the decision of partition of Bengal. To encourage British to take the decision of partition of Bengal. Extremists charged moderates of encouraging British to such an extent that Britishers went for partition of Bengal. So extremists held moderate responsible for partition of Bengal, and therefore the extremist tendency had developed in the Indian National Congress. Extremist tendency had developed in Indian National Congress. Calcutta Corporation Act, Indian Universities Act, during the time of Lord Curzon, these two acts was passed. Calcutta Corporation Act and Indian Universities Act. Calcutta Corporation Act. Nominated member in the corporation had increased. Nominated member in the corporation had increased. So British would have greater control over the corporation. British would have greater control over the corporation. greater control over the corporation. So British wanted to have a control over the local bodies also. British wanted to have control over the local bodies also. Indian Universities Act. Indian Universities Act. Indian Universities Act. Indian Universities Act 1904. Government had better control over the universities. Government had established better control over the universities so that the nationalist movement should not enter in universities. Indian Universities Act 1904. So that government would have better control over the universities, so that the nationalist movement should not enter in universities. So government wanted to have better control over the university. Better control over the university. Indian University Act 1904. So these are the factors that led to the rise of extremist tendencies. So 1885, Indian National Congress came into existence, and by 1900 the membership of Congress had increased significantly, and along with that we can see that there are two powerful wings of the Congress. One is moderate and another one is extremist. Two powerful wings of the Congress, moderate and extremist. Moderate and extremist. So objective of Indian National Congress. Objective of Indian National Congress. The objective of Indian National Congress was very much defined in its first session. Very much defined in its first session. Very much defined in its first session. First objective. First objective, to integrate all sections of Indian society, to integrate all sections of Indian society and promote the feeling of nationalism among them. Promote the feeling of nationalism among them. Promote the feeling of nationalism among them. Second, to develop mental, moral, social, and political awakening among the Indians. To mental, moral, and political awakening among the Indians. Third, to consolidate union between India and England. To consolidate union between India and England. To consolidate union between India and England. So these three objectives was very much forwarded in the first session of Indian National Congress. To integrate all sections of Indian society and promote the feeling of nationalism. Second, to promote mental, moral, political, social awakening among the Indians. And third is that to consolidate the union between India and England. Demand of Indian National Congress. Political demand. Political demand. Constitutional reform. Constitutional reform. That is expansion of council and reform of councils. Expansion of councils and reform of councils. Constitutional demand. So political demand includes the constitutional demand, that demand of the council, expansion of council and reforms in the council. Expansion means greater participation of Indians. Expansion means greater participation of Indians. Reform means more powers to the council, especially greater control over the finance. Especially greater control over the finance. Economic demands. Economic demands means reduction of the taxes, that is reduction of the land revenue, reduction of the land revenue, checking the drain of wealth, extension of irrigation facilities, extension of irrigation facilities, military demand, abolition of Arms Act, appointment of Indians in the commission rank in military, reduction of defense expenditure, reduction of defense expenditure, social demand, more expenditure on welfare activities, delivery of justice on time, delivery of justice on time, protection of civil rights, right to speech, thought, association, free press, right to speech, thought, association and free press. So civil rights included the right to speech, thought association, and a free press. So these are the demands made by Indian National Congress. In the first session, initially these are the major demands presented. So both moderate and extremist were the strong member of the Indian National Congress, and they had a differences in mass base, differences in method and technique, as well as objectivity. Method and technique as well as objectivity. So these are the major factors. These are the major factors. So by the closing years of the 19th century, you can say the moderate and extremist had a very important presence in the Indian National Congress. But no doubt in this they had contributed immensely in the activities of Congress. They were in the prime position to generate the feeling of nationalism and to intensify the program of Indian national movement. So remember the graph I made very first day when we started modern India, that whenever we have the program of the Indian national movement intensified, the British had a consistent policy of divide and rule. Consistent policy of divide and rule. Consistent policy of divide and rule. So the period 1900 to the second phase of nationalism, and then come to the mass national movement, second phase. 1900 till the advent of Gandhi properly in Indian politics, 1900 to 1919. This is also known as the aggressive phase. So aggressive phase of the policy of aggressive phase of the policy of divide and rule. Aggressive phase of the policy of divide and rule. We have Lord Curzon, (1899 to 1905), Lord Minto, second, 1905 to 1910. Lord Hardinge. So you will see some of the viceroy, Lord Hardinge second. Lord Curzon, Lord Minto second, Lord Hardinge second. So these viceroys had definitely played a very important role in pursuing the policy called policy of divide and rule. Particularly Curzon and Minto, they were the master of the policy of divide and rule. Curzon and Minto II had the master of the policy of divide and rule. Master of the policy of divide and rule. Lord Curzon. Lord Curzon. So we have seen many works of Lord Curzon, if you remember. Many commissions, committees, we have already clarified when we are talking about the causes for the rise of nationalism. I hope all of you had gone through and have revised also. I think we have done it yesterday only. So Lord Curzon, 1899 to 1905. So out of the many things that we have talked, you can see that we have the partition of Bengal. Partition of Bengal. Partition of Bengal that was a well-designed policy of Lord Curzon. Partition of Bengal 1905. So Curzon wanted to divide the Bengal. Look, Bengal was nerve center of nationalism. Bengali intelligentsia was very vibrant intelligentsia in India. And anything moderate, extremist, revolutionaries, all ideas coming out from Bengal and then spread it in different parts of India. Coming out of Bengal and spread it in different parts of India. So the moderate politics. The Bengali intelligentsia coming out of different parts of India. So Curzon wanted to create so many problems inside Bengal. Social crisis, economic crisis, so that people will tap inside the internal problem and then the feeling of nationalism will get diverted. So this is a main reason nationalists claimed that this is a main reason behind the partition of Bengal. Okay, I told you that what the Bengal was a nerve center of nationalism. The Bengali intelligentsia was giving great impetus to the moderate ideology, extremist ideology, revolutionary ideologies. So therefore, all coming out from the Bengal, and it had spread it in different parts of India. So therefore, Curzon wanted to divide Bengal in order to create many social and economic crises so that the people will tap in the internal issues and the feeling of nationalism will get subsided. And this is the reason behind the partition of Bengal. This is the real reason. And actually, uh, Curzon created the communal tension. Curzon said that we are creating the East Bengal, a separate Muslim majority province. Look at the statement that Curzon had made. It's a very tall statement Curzon made. Curzon said that since the days of Prophet Muhammad, the Muslims are fighting for their own homeland, and it is the biggest responsibility of the British to provide them. And therefore, we are providing East Bengal. So Curzon wanted to break the solidarity of Hindus and Muslims by giving so much appeasement to the Muslims in the East Bengal. And that is the reason why the conflict, social tension between Hindus and Muslims will diminish the collective effort of nationalism. So this is the main reason that Curzon wanted to create the social crisis. And you know, whenever there is a communal tension, social crisis, in India particularly, if there is no coordination between Hindus and Muslims, no development. Sabka Saath, Sabka Bikash. No Saath, no Bikash. Therefore, the Curzon will create the social tension, and the subsequently what? Subsequently, there will be economic crisis also. So Bengal will be tapped in various social and economic crises. So the Bengalis' attention to the nationalist movement will get diverted and it will confine to the local issues. So this is the main reason behind the partition of Bengal. I hope you have understood this partition theory. It's a very easy, nothing so much of the tense thing. And second is officially Curzon said that we are dividing Bengal in order to create socio-economic crisis in Bengal. In order to create socio-economic crisis in Bengal. Curzon officers said that we are dividing the Bengal because of the administrative region. Administrative region is the real region. Bengal is a large state. So in order to have a better administrative manageability, we are dividing Bengal. So official region is cited as an administrative region. But the real reason is that nationalists understood to create the socio-economic crisis. Okay. But if administrative region is the real region, then there are many provinces which is much bigger in size than Bengal, like Bombay, like Madras. So Curzon should have gone for division of that province. Okay. So this is how the partition of Bengal was planned. So anti-partition movement will come, but Curzon was the masterman who actually wanted to diminish the impact of national movement. So he actually was the mastermind to plan the partition. But before the partition plan would have impacted or British government had made it effective, there was a controversy called Curzon-Kitchener controversy. So Kitchener was a military commander in the Curzon's council. So the controversy developed between Curzon and Kitchener. And because of that controversy, Curzon had to resign. Actually, Kitchener had created test in military, which was in par with the British military. So many military had disqualified, and Curzon sent a report directly to the Home Ministry of London, that condition of military of India is not good. So without taking consent from the Curzon, Kitchener did all these things. So the reason behind the Curzon-Kitchener controversy was the role of military commander in the Viceroy's Executive Council. And this is the reason why the Curzon-Kitchener controversy, we can see the resignation of Lord Curzon. So resignation of Lord Curzon, it was something, the much ceremonial Viceroy who came to India with a drum beating that we are the master, I am the master of the policy of divide and rule. So much ceremonial Viceroy had unceremonial exit. So we will see the partition of Bengal one by one point we will talk. Swadeshi movement will talk, and then how the partition plan came to an end. So all these things. Yes, we will dictate all the partition theory. First we will take the lunch and have energy, then we'll sit back to find the things. Okay, let's take a break.